Hey guys, Edward here from Edward79, the Mixed Content Creator. Now, if you've seen my ranking metals from lowest to highest melting point parts 1 and 2, you probably know that these parts are going in ascending order. Well, this video is part 3, and that trend is going to be continued. So without further ado, let's get to the ranks. First up in part 3 is manganese. Manganese is a trace mineral, and for those of you who don't know, trace minerals are elements that your body needs, but only in very small amounts. Other examples include potassium, iron, calcium, magnesium, and zinc. But as a metal, manganese is brittle and silvery when pure, but its ore only occurs as various manganese oxides, which are composed of manganese that is reacted with, you guessed it, oxygen. As for applications, it's used heavily in steel, but can also be found in batteries, bricks, fertilizers, textiles, glass, and pigments. Manganese has a medium-high melting point, melting at 2,275 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,246 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is beryllium. Although it is a good conductor of electricity and heat, there are two big reasons why it is not used in cookware or electrical wiring. The first, copper still absolutely crushes beryllium in conductivity. And the second, and more important, beryllium is one of the most toxic elements on the periodic table. It's so toxic, in fact, that there's an often fatal lung disease that's caused pretty much exclusively by beryllium exposure, known as chronic beryllium disease, aka CBD. Beryllium's melting point isn't that far off from that of manganese, melting at 2,348 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,287 degrees Celsius. Next on this list is steel. Now, back in part 2, I mentioned that brass is a mix of two or more metals known as an alloy. Steel is also an alloy, except this time it's iron, carbon, a small amount of manganese that's mixed together, alongside trace amounts of phosphorus, sulfur, silicon, and oxygen. And yes, since steel has iron, it does rust, with a partial exception: stainless steel. This is because stainless steel has a coating of chromium, which protects the steel it covers against rusting and corrosion, making the metal much slower to rust. Steel also has a medium-high melting point, melting at 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,370 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is nickel. Despite the coins being named nickels, the alloy used to make nickel is actually only 25% nickel. What's the other 75%, may you ask? Copper. Nickel resists corrosion even at high temperatures and is extremely durable, making it perfect for many alloys. It's commonly used in stainless steel, but a nickel alloy you probably did not know about at all is nichrome, an alloy of nickel and chromium with trace amounts of silicon, iron, and manganese. Nickel is also used to plate other metals due to its corrosion resistance, and it also has a high melting point, with a melting point of 2,651 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,455 degrees Celsius. Next on this list is cobalt. Like with its periodic table next-door neighbor nickel, cobalt occurs in nature only in combination with other elements. And although it's crucial in lithium-ion batteries, cobalt is used in a wide variety of different products and building materials, such as car airbags, corrosion and heat-resistant alloys, cemented carbides, electroplating, drying agents in paints, inks, and varnishes, dyes, pigments, magnets, and coats for porcelain products. But despite these uses, cobalt is typically nothing more than a byproduct of mining other more abundant metals, most notably copper and zinc. Cobalt has a high melting point, melting at 2,723 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,495 degrees Celsius. Next up on this list is iron. Iron is one of the most common elements on Earth. I mean, most of the Earth's core is made of iron, and it's also one of the most abundant elements in the crust as well. It's the major ingredient in steel, and even though most metals oxidize with a few exceptions, looking at you, gold and platinum, iron is the only metal that actually rusts. Here's how. You see, iron rusts via iron or a material that contains iron like steel getting exposed to moisture. That moisture allows the iron to react with oxygen, forming ferrous oxide, aka rust. Iron has a higher melting point than the steel it's made from, with a melting point of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,538 degrees Celsius. Coming up next is the 8th rarest non-radioactive metal on Earth and the most expensive of the big four precious metals, palladium. It's the 3rd most expensive metal on Earth, with the price of a whopping $2,195 for a single troy ounce of the stuff. This insane price tag completely overthrows silver, gold, and platinum, with only iridium and rhodium being more expensive than palladium. This preposterously priced metal also happens to have a really high melting point, melting at a sizzling 2,831 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,555 degrees Celsius. Next on this list is titanium. Now, titanium has a bit of a reputation for being super strong and durable. And while it is strong and durable by all means, and while it is corrosion resistant, a metal that I'll be mentioning in part 4 actually takes the cake as the toughest metal that isn't an alloy. Titanium is just as strong and durable as steel, but titanium only has about 45% the density of steel, making it perfect for applications that need a material to be super strong but also relatively lightweight. Titanium also has one of the highest melting points of any metal, with a melting point of a scorching 3,034 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,668 degrees Celsius. Next on this list is platinum. Alongside gold, platinum is one of the most well-recognized symbols of wealth and riches, and for good reason. Platinum is the 5th most expensive metal on Earth, and a single troy ounce of this stuff will set you back $958. And just like with gold and other noble metals, its chemical inertness grants platinum the ability of being almost indestructible. It resists corrosion, doesn't tarnish, can withstand highly acidic solutions, and it doesn't even oxidize. Platinum has the 12th highest melting point of all the metals on this list, with a melting point of a sizzling 3,215 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,768 degrees Celsius. Finally, to round out part 3 is zirconium. Zirconium is way more reactive than the previously mentioned inert platinum, as it's violently reactive with a lot of different substances, even with water. But reactivity aside, zirconium still has a lot of applications, such as scissors, knives, cosmetics, food packaging, antiperspirants, abrasives, crucibles, foundry bricks, glass, and ceramics. Zirconium also happens to have a really, really, really high melting point, melting at an absolutely insane 3,371 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,855 degrees Celsius.